Brittany Davis had exactly 4 seconds to decide if she was going to die tonight. The mafia boss standing in her kitchen wasn't offering her a date. He was offering her exposure. And exposure, in her line of work, meant a bullet. "You're coming with me to the Colombo wedding." Shin Do-yoon's voice cut through the silence of the penthouse kitchen, like a blade through silk. No preamble, no explanation, just a statement that could end her mission, her cover, and possibly her life. Brittany's hands were submerged in soapy water, scrubbing a wine glass that suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She didn't turn around, didn't react. That's what maids did. They stayed invisible. They didn't ask questions. But intelligence agents? They calculated survival odds in milliseconds. 4 possible exits. 2 armed guards between her and the elevator. 1 man blocking the kitchen door. Shin Do-yoon himself. 6 feet of controlled violence in a tailored black shirt, watching her like a hawk watches a mouse that's stopped running. "Sir, I think there's been no mistake." He moved into the kitchen, his footsteps silent on the marble floor, predatory. "I chose you deliberately." Her pulse spiked. The word deliberately hung in the air like a threat. She forced herself to turn around slowly, water dripping from her hands. "Act normal. Act confused. Act like the maid he thinks you are." "I don't understand, Mr. Do-yoon." "You will." His eyes locked onto hers, dark and unreadable. "The Colombo wedding. Tomorrow night. You'll be on my arm when I walk into that ballroom." Brittany's mind was already racing through the implications. The Colombo wedding wasn't just a social event. It was the largest gathering of organized crime figures on the East Coast in 5 years. FBI had files on it. Interpol had surveillance planned. And she had her own reasons for wanting access to that guest list. But walking in on Shin Do-yoon's arm? That wasn't infiltration. That was suicide. "Why does it have to be me?" The question came out steadier than she felt. Shin tilted his head slightly, studying her. "Because you're nobody. A maid. A shadow. When I bring you into that wedding, it won't just insult the Colombos. It'll confuse them. And confused enemies make mistakes. Nobody. The word should have stung. Instead, it was exactly what she needed him to believe. Behind Shin, his second-in-command appeared. Chris Blake, former military, now Shin's most trusted lieutenant. His expression said he thought his boss had lost his mind. "Boss," Chris said carefully, "the Colombos will take this as a direct insult. They'll retaliate. I'm counting on it." Brittany's stomach twisted. She was being used as bait, a calculated provocation designed to trigger a war. But what Shin didn't know was that she needed that chaos. She needed the distraction, the moment when security would be fractured and attention would be divided. She needed access to one man who would be at that wedding, Consigliere Marco, the man who knew where they'd taken her sister. Mrs. Han rushed into the kitchen, her silk robe flowing behind her like a storm cloud. Shin's aunt, the matriarch who'd raised him after his parents died, the only person who could challenge him without consequences. "Shin, tell me you haven't." She saw Brittany and froze. "No, absolutely not. You cannot bring staff to the Colombo wedding. The humiliation would be calculated," Shin finished. "Everything I do is calculated, Aunt." Mrs. Han's face hardened. "This will start a war." "Yes, it will." The certainty in his voice sent ice down Brittany's spine. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't emotional. He was planning something bigger, and she was a chess piece in a game she didn't fully understand yet. Mrs. Han turned to Brittany, her eyes filled with something that looked almost like pity. "Child, do you understand what he's asking of you?" Brittany met her gaze. "I'm starting to." "Then refuse, walk away. Find employment somewhere safer." "She won't refuse," Shin said quietly. Too quietly. "Will you, Brittany?" It wasn't a question. It was a test. Brittany looked at him directly, letting him see the fear he expected, the submission he wanted. "No, Mr. Do-yoon. I won't refuse." Mrs. Han shook her head. "You're playing with forces beyond your control, nephew. Both of you." She looked at Brittany one more time, and her expression shifted to something almost knowing. "Be careful, child. Shin collects broken things, and he never lets them go." She left, her warning hanging in the air. Chris stayed, his arms crossed. "Boss, if this goes wrong." "It won't." Shin's eyes never left Brittany. "Because she's smarter than she looks. Aren't you, Brittany?" Her blood went cold. Did he know? Had she made a mistake somewhere? Left a trail? "I don't know what you mean, sir." He moved closer. Close enough that she could see the scar along his jawline, the one he got in a knife fight in Seoul before he came to America. Close enough that she could smell danger on him like expensive cologne. "You've worked in my home for 11 months, he said softly. "You've never asked for a raise, never complained, never tried to steal from me, seduce me, or leverage your position. In my world, that makes you either extraordinarily boring or extraordinarily disciplined." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "I'm just trying to keep my job, Mr. Yoon. Perhaps." The word was almost a whisper. "But tomorrow night you'll be the most useful person in that ballroom, whether you know it or not." He stepped back, the moment of tension breaking like a snapped wire. 7 a.m. "A car will take you to get prepared. Don't bring anything from your room. Don't call anyone. Don't leave this building before the car arrives." He paused at the door. "And Brittany? Whatever happens tomorrow night, you follow my lead. No matter what you see, no matter what you think you understand, you stay silent, you stay close, and you trust that I have a plan." He walked out. Chris lingered for a moment, his expression unreadable. "He suspects something," he said quietly. "Not what exactly, but he knows you're not just a maid. Be careful tomorrow night." Shin's plans have a way of burning everyone involved. Then he was gone too. Brittany stood alone in the massive kitchen, water still dripping from her hands onto the pristine floor. She moved to the staff lockers on autopilot, her training kicking in. Assess, adapt, survive. She pulled out the small waterproof pouch hidden in the lining of her spare uniform. Inside was a microchip containing 3 years of reconnaissance, a photograph, and a burner phone with 2 contacts. Her hands shook as she looked at Zahra's picture. Her baby sister, 16 in this photo, smiling in a yellow sundress at their mother's funeral. 3 months after this photo was taken, Zahra disappeared, trafficked by a network that fed directly into the Colombo family operations. For 3 years, Brittany had hunted, FBI field agent to going completely rogue when the Bureau prioritized other cases. She'd tracked the network across 6 countries, through dozens of shell companies, following the digital breadcrumbs that pointed to one man, Consigliere Marco. Marco ran the Colombo's trafficking operations with surgical precision. Girls moved like cargo, money laundered through legitimate businesses, protection bought at the highest levels of government. For 2 years, Brittany couldn't get close. Marco was too careful, too protected. Then she'd discovered the connection. Shin Yoon's export business occasionally moved shipments for the Colombos, legitimate cargo mixed with contraband. A partnership of convenience between a rising Korean-American boss and the old Italian guard. 11 months ago, she'd applied for a maid position in Shin's household. A way to monitor the relationship, to identify when shipments moved, to find the pattern that would lead her to Marco. And now, impossibly, Shin was offering her exactly what she needed, access to Marco at the wedding. But why? What did Shin really want? She pressed the photo against her chest, breathing slowly. 24 hours, 1 wedding, 1 chance. The answer, she suspected, was going to be worse than she imagined. Welcome back, my beautiful souls and kindred spirits. Before we start, go ahead and subscribe, like, and share where you're watching from. It always warms my heart to see our little storytelling family stretch across the world. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you give helps us keep uncovering these unforgettable stories together. So find your quiet place, settle in, and let me take you somewhere you've never been before. The transformation suite existed in a space Brittany hadn't known was part of Shin's empire. Not the penthouse, not the warehouse. A private floor in a luxury hotel he owned, accessed through a private elevator that required 3 separate biometric scans. The walls were pearl white, the lighting warm and diffused, creating an atmosphere that felt both clinical and intimate. She stood in the center of the room, still wearing her maid's uniform, while a woman with silver hair and surgeon's hands circled her like a predator assessing prey. "Remove the uniform," the woman said. Her accent was French, her tone clinical. Brittany obeyed, peeling away the black fabric that had been her disguise for 11 months. Underneath, she wore simple cotton undergarments. Nothing seductive. Nothing that would draw attention. The stylist's eyes traveled across her skin, pausing at the scars. A knife wound on her ribs from Karachi. A bullet graze on her shoulder from Budapest. Fieldwork, the woman said, not a question. Brittany didn't answer. The stylist simply nodded and gestured toward a chair positioned before floor-to-ceiling mirrors. For the next 3 hours, Brittany was transformed. Hands worked through her hair, pulling it into an elegant updo that exposed the length of her neck. Makeup was applied with precision. Dark, smoky eyes that made her look dangerous rather than innocent. Red lips the color of blood in low light. But it was the dress that changed everything. The stylist brought it out on a mannequin, and Brittany's breath caught despite her training. Midnight black silk, cut so precisely it looked like it had been designed specifically for her body. Off-shoulder, plunging neckline, a slit that traveled dangerously high up the thigh. The fabric shimmered like oil on water, catching light in ways that seemed almost alive. He chose this himself, the stylist said quietly. Every detail. The color is deliberate. The Colombos favor white and gold. He wants you to be the darkness in their light. Brittany ran her fingers across the silk. It felt like water, like sin, like a weapon she would wear against her skin. When she emerged from behind the screen wearing the dress, the stylist's expression shifted to something almost like approval. "You'll do more than insult them," she said. "You'll make them remember why they should fear change." The door opened. Shin Yoon entered the room like he owned the air itself. He was dressed in a black tuxedo, tailored so perfectly it looked like a second skin. His hair was swept back, exposing the sharp angles of his face, the scar along his jaw that he never bothered to hide. His eyes traveled across her slowly, methodically, the way a jeweler examines a flawless diamond before setting it in a crown. He didn't speak, didn't need to. His silence was louder than any compliment. He circled her once, his footsteps barely audible on the marble floor. When he stood behind her, she could feel the heat of his body through the thin silk. His breath was warm against her exposed shoulder. "Perfect," he finally said. The word was soft, almost reverent, and it sent ice down her spine. The stylist left without being dismissed. Brittany heard the door lock behind her. They were alone. Shin moved to stand in front of her, his eyes never leaving hers. "What do you see when you look in that mirror, Brittany?" She met his gaze in the reflection. A woman playing a part. Close. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "You see a weapon. That's what you've been for 3 years. What you became the moment your sister disappeared." Her pulse spiked. He knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." His hand came up, fingers brushing her jaw with agonizing slowness. "I've watched you for 11 months, Brittany. I know what you are. Former FBI. Current ghost. You've been living in my home, moving through my operation, searching for something. Someone." She forced herself to breathe, to think. "If you knew, why didn't you kill me?" "Because you were useful. Because watching you work was fascinating." His thumb traced the line of her jaw. "Because I wanted to see where you were going, what you were willing to sacrifice. And now I know." "Know what?" "That you'll do anything to find your sister. Including walking into the most dangerous room on the East Coast tomorrow night. Including trusting me." He stepped back, breaking the contact. The Colombo wedding isn't just a social event, it's a power play. Marco is consolidating control over the family's trafficking operations. He's meeting with buyers, brokers, officials. Everything you've been hunting for 3 years will be in that ballroom. And you're giving me access because Marco and the Colombos represent everything I'm trying to move away from. I came to this country with nothing. Built an empire through discipline and strategy. Now the old families expect me to stay in my place. Be their minority partner, move their dirty cargo, take their scraps. His eyes hardened. "Tomorrow night, I'm showing them what happens when they underestimate a Korean immigrant who's smarter than they are. By bringing a black woman as your date. By bringing you, a woman who represents everything they fear. Intelligence, determination. Someone who doesn't play by their outdated rules." He moved closer again. "You want access to Marco. I want to humiliate the Colombos. We both get what we need. And after? After you disappear. New identity, clean records, enough money to take your sister anywhere in the world. He paused. That's the deal I'm offering. What's the catch? His smile was sharp. You do exactly what I tell you tomorrow night. You trust my plan. And you remember that whatever happens, I'm the one who gave you this chance. She studied his face, looking for the trap, the betrayal waiting beneath the surface, but all she saw was cold calculation and something else. Genuine anger at the families who'd treated him like a useful tool rather than an equal. I'll need a weapon. You'll have one, concealed, but you only use it if everything goes wrong. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a small device. Micro earpiece. Chris will be monitoring. If you need extraction, he'll coordinate. She took the earpiece, feeling its weight. This was really happening. After 3 years of dead ends and close calls, she was finally going to be in the same room as Marco. Why are you really helping me? She asked. Shin was quiet for a moment, then. Because Mrs. Han was right. I collect broken things, and you're the most beautifully broken thing I've ever seen. He turned toward the door. 7 p.m. tomorrow. The car will be waiting. He left. Brittany stood alone with her reflection, seeing the weapon Shin had described. The dress, the makeup, the transformation from invisible Maid to impossible to ignore presence. She pressed her hand against the cool glass, feeling the weight of 3 years settling on her shoulders. Tomorrow night, everything would change. The convoy was a statement. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows, flanked by motorcycles whose riders wore no visible insignia. The kind of security detail that announced power without needing to speak it aloud. Brittany sat in the center vehicle, beside Shin, her hands folded in her lap, the black silk of her dress pooling around her like ink. She could feel the weight of the weapon strapped to her inner thigh. A compact Glock 43, small enough to be invisible, deadly enough to matter. Shin hadn't spoken since they'd left the penthouse. He sat beside her, one arm draped across the back of the seat, his fingers occasionally brushing her bare shoulder. Each touch was deliberate, a reminder. You belong to me tonight. The micro earpiece was barely noticeable, tucked deep in her ear canal. Chris's voice came through, quiet and controlled. All teams in position. Surveillance confirms Marco arrived 20 minutes ago. He's in the main ballroom. Brittany's pulse quickened. 3 years. 3 years of hunting, and she was finally close. The Long Island estate appeared through the window like something from a fever dream. White stone, towering columns, gardens illuminated by thousands of hidden lights. The circular driveway was already crowded with luxury vehicles. Maseratis, Bentleys, Rolls-Royces. Money so old it didn't need to announce itself. But their convoy didn't stop at the valet area. We're going through the front entrance, Shin said quietly. I want every eye on us from the moment we arrive. Brittany's stomach twisted. That's asking for trouble. That's the point. He turned to face her, his expression carved from stone. The Colombos need to understand that the old rules no longer apply, that their disrespect has consequences. The SUV rolled to a stop directly in front of the main entrance. The door opened. Shin stepped out first, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease, his movements liquid and controlled. Then he reached back for her. His hand was warm, strong, possessive. She took it, letting him pull her from the vehicle, letting the dress settle around her like armor made of shadow. The moment her heels touched the stone, she felt it. The shift in the air. The sudden silence. Every head turned. She was a black woman in midnight silk, standing beside a Korean-American mob boss at an Italian mafia wedding. The insult was visual, immediate, undeniable. She represented everything the old guard Colombos despised. Modernity, diversity, the erosion of their precious traditions. Shin's arm slid around her waist, pulling her against his side. His touch burned through the silk. Walk, he whispered against her ear. Let them see what happens when I decide their rules don't apply to me. They moved toward the entrance, and the crowd parted like water before a blade. Brittany kept her chin high, her expression neutral, her training suppressing the urge to scan for exits, for threats, for Marco's face in the sea of expensive suits. A woman stepped forward, blocking their path. Viviana Colombo, the Don's wife, draped in white lace and diamonds that probably cost more than some countries' GDPs. Her eyes were venomous. "Mr. Du Yoon," she said, her voice dripping false courtesy. "How? Unexpected. Mrs. Colombo." Shin didn't bow, didn't defer. "Congratulations on your son's wedding." Viviana's gaze slid to Brittany, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. "You brought staff?" "I brought my guest," Shin corrected, his voice soft and lethal. "To a family wedding. To a business gathering disguised as a family wedding." His smile was a knife. "Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this is purely social." Viviana's face tightened, but she stepped aside. "The Don will want to speak with you." "I'm counting on it." They passed into the estate. The ballroom was obscene in its opulence. Crystal chandeliers the size of cars, marble floors inlaid with gold, tables draped in cream silk, centerpieces overflowing with white roses and peonies. Everything bright, everything pure, everything designed to showcase the Colombo family's wealth and traditional power. And in the center of it all, Brittany and Shin, darkness incarnate. Shin guided her to their assigned table. They were positioned strategically, she realized. Close enough to the main table to be visible, far enough to be dismissible. An insult within an insult, invited but marginalized. As they sat, Brittany finally allowed herself to scan the room. She cataloged faces, matched them to files she'd memorized over 3 years, made captains, soldiers, associates. And there, at the head table, Don Colombo himself, gray-haired and granite-faced, his fury barely contained. Beside him sat Consigliere Marco. Her breath caught. He was younger than his dossier photo suggested. Mid-40s, handsome in the way of men who understood power as an art form. Dark hair perfectly styled, sharp suit that probably cost $10,000, eyes that moved across the room with predatory precision. He was scanning faces, assessing threats, calculating alliances. Then he found her. Their eyes locked. Marco's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his gaze. Curiosity, assessment. He was trying to place her, to understand why Shin Do-yoon had brought a complete unknown to this gathering. "He's looking at you," Shin murmured, his lips against her ear. "Marco, he's trying to figure out if you're a message or a threat." "What should I do?" "Nothing. Let him wonder. Curiosity is a weakness in men like him." Chris's voice crackled in her earpiece. "Bride's procession starting. Stay alert. I've got movement in the north corridor. Additional security that wasn't here during reconnaissance." Before Brittany could process this, the music swelled. The procession was beginning. The bride entered first. A vision in white lace, her face serene, her steps measured. Behind her came the bridesmaids, a parade of cream and gold, and then the groom. Captain Alistair Thorne walked down the aisle in his dress uniform, medals gleaming, his posture military perfect. Brittany's heart stopped. "No. No. No. No." Alistair's eyes swept the room in the practiced pattern of a trained operative. Then they found her and froze. Shin felt her reaction instantly, his hand tightening on her waist. "You know him." It wasn't a question. Alistair's face went through a series of micro-expressions. Shock, calculation, understanding. Then he did something that made the entire ballroom gasp. He stopped walking mid-aisle, turned to face her directly, and delivered a perfect, crisp military salute. Not to the assembled guests, not to the families, to her. The ballroom erupted in whispers. Chris's voice in her ear. "What the hell just happened? Who is that?" Shin's fingers dug into her side, hard enough to bruise. "What was that?" Brittany's mind was racing. Alistair was supposed to be deep cover. His entire identity as the groom was his infiltration vector. The salute had just blown everything. Unless he was warning her. Telling her the operation was compromised. That she needed to abort. "I need to leave," she whispered. "You're not going anywhere." Shin rose, pulling her up with him, his grip iron. "Smile. We're going to congratulate the happy couple. And you're going to explain to me exactly what's happening." He guided her toward the receiving line, his hand never leaving her waist. Around them, guests were still whispering, staring, trying to understand what they'd just witnessed. Mrs. Han appeared at their side, her face pale. "Shin, That was a military salute. In front of Don Colombo. In front of everyone. Her eyes went to Brittany. Who are you really, child? Not now, Aunt, Shin said quietly. They reached Alistair. The bride beside him looked confused and hurt, clearly not understanding why her new husband had just publicly acknowledged a stranger. Alistair's jaw was tight. When he spoke, his voice was low, meant only for them. Miss Davis. I'm surprised to see you here. Captain Thorne, she replied, matching his formal tone. Congratulations on your wedding. Thank you. His eyes flicked to Shin, then back to her. A warning. I hope you'll save me a dance later. We have much to catch up on. The message was clear. We need to talk. Privately. Of course, she said. They moved past, continuing through the receiving line, but the damage was done. Don Colombo was watching them now, his expression thunderous. Marco had his phone out, typing rapidly, probably running her face through databases, trying to identify her. Shin pulled her toward a side corridor, away from the crowd. The moment they were alone, he spun her to face him. Talk, now. Who is Captain Thorne, and why did he just compromise both of us? He's my former partner, FBI Joint Task Force. We worked together for 2 years before I went. She hesitated. Rogue, Shin finished. You went rogue to find your sister, and he stayed in the system. But now he's here, deep cover, married into the Colombo family. His eyes narrowed. This isn't coincidence. The FBI has been running a parallel operation. And that salute means he just burned his cover to warn you about something. Chris appeared at the corridor entrance. Boss, we need to move. Marco's security is converging on this location. He's made you. Both of us, Shin corrected. He looked at Brittany. Change of plans. We're leaving. But first. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Activate Protocol 7. Yes, now. Because we're about to start a war. He ended the call, then cupped Brittany's face, forcing her to meet his eyes. Whatever happens next, whatever you think you understand, trust me. I didn't bring you here to die. I brought you here to win. Win what? Everything. Chris's voice was urgent. Boss. I know. Shin released Brittany, drawing his weapon in one smooth motion. Time to show the Colombos what happens when they underestimate me. The corridor exploded into chaos. The safe room was in the sub-basement of the Colombo estate. An unexpected refuge that Shin's people had somehow identified during reconnaissance. Concrete walls, steel door, emergency lighting. The kind of place designed to survive sieges. Brittany, Shin, Chris, and, impossibly, Alistair Thorne, all crammed into the small space while above them, the wedding had transformed into a lockdown. She could hear boots pounding through corridors, radios crackling, the controlled chaos of a security response. Alistair was no longer in his dress uniform. He'd changed into tactical black during the confusion, his wedding forgotten, his cover thoroughly blown. You ruined 2 years of infiltration, he said, looking at Brittany. Not angry, just stating a fact. You saluted me in front of everyone, she countered. Because the operation was already compromised. Marco's been running counterintelligence for 6 months. He knew about our surveillance, our communications, intercepts, everything. Alistair pulled out a tablet, swiping through data. The wedding was a trap designed to draw out anyone watching him. The moment Shin walked in with you, it triggered his alarms. How? Shin asked. Because you don't bring civilians to mob weddings. And you certainly don't bring mysterious women that no one in your organization has ever heard of. Alistair looked at Brittany. Marco ran your face through his databases the moment he saw you. Nothing came back. No social media. No employment records beyond your Maid position. No digital footprint. That's a red flag the size of Texas. Brittany felt her carefully constructed cover crumbling. He knows I'm an agent. He knows you're something. Not what, not yet. But he's about to start making inquiries that will eventually lead back to your FBI file. Alistair's expression softened slightly. I saluted you to warn you to abort. To get out before he connected the dots. Too late for that, Chris said from his position by the door. We're locked in this estate until Marco gives the all clear, and he won't. Not until he figures out what's happening. Shin was quiet, his mind clearly working through angles. How long until your agency moves? Moves on what? Alistair asked. The shipment. Marco's consolidating his trafficking operation tonight. That's the real reason for this wedding. He's using it as cover to move high-value assets to a ship docked at Port Newark. Shin looked at Brittany. That's what you're really here for, isn't it? You think your sister is on that ship. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Alistair's eyes widened. Zahra, you have intel she's being moved tonight? Not intel, Shin said. Logic. Marco's been consolidating for months. Tonight he has maximum cover. A wedding, heightened security, legitimate traffic. It's the perfect time to relocate high-value assets before law enforcement closes in. And Brittany's sister is valuable. Military family, languages, discipline. She'd be premium merchandise. Brittany's voice was barely a whisper. How do you know about Zara? Because I've known who you are since month 3 of your employment. I've watched you hunt. I've seen the photograph you keep hidden. I've monitored your encrypted communications. Shin's gaze was steady, unflinching. I've known everything, Brittany. And I've been helping you without you realizing it. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. You've been helping me? Every shipment I moved for the Colombos, I copied the manifests. Every meeting Marco attended at my properties, I recorded. Every piece of his operation that touched mine, I documented. He pulled out his phone, showing her a file directory with hundreds of entries. I've been building a case against Marco for 11 months, because men like him are bad for business. They bring attention, heat, federal scrutiny. And you were waiting for the right moment to burn him? Alistair said slowly. Yes. And Brittany gave me the perfect leverage. An FBI agent turned vigilante, hunting the same target, with personal stakes that made her more motivated than any agency operative. Shin looked at her. You've been my weapon without knowing it. And tonight, we're using you to destroy Marco completely. Brittany's hands were shaking, with rage, with betrayal, with the horrible understanding that she'd been played since the beginning. You manipulated me. I armed you, Shin corrected. Everything you needed. Access, timing, opportunity, I provided. The wedding invitation was my gift. Putting you in the same room as Marco was deliberate. And when he ran your face and found nothing, when he started questioning who you were, that was the opening. Opening for what? Alistair demanded. Shin smiled. For Brittany to approach him, to offer him exactly what he wants, information about my operation, to play the desperate agent willing to betray her handler for a chance at her sister. Marco won't be able to resist recruiting her. That's insane, Alistair said. He'll see through it. Not if she gives him real intelligence. Not if she hands him access to my secondary accounts, my transaction records, my corrupt officials. Shin's eyes locked onto Brittany's. Not if she actually betrays me. The room went silent. You want me to give him your empire? Brittany said slowly. I want you to give him the empire I'm destroying anyway. The old model. Trafficking, extortion. The shit that Marco represents. Everything I've been trying to move away from. He stepped closer. I didn't come to America to be the Colombo's minority partner. I came here to build something better. Something that doesn't require destroying lives. But I can't do that while Marco and his network exist. They're anchors dragging me back into the darkness. So you're using her to cut yourself loose, Alistair said, by sacrificing your current operation to build something new. Exactly. And in the process, Brittany gets what she wants. Access to Marco's shipping network, to the manifests that show where they're moving her sister, to the ship itself. Brittany's mind was reeling. 3 years of hunting, and the answer had been hidden in plain sight the entire time she'd been cleaning Shin's penthouse. Where's the ship? She asked. Port Newark. Pier 47. Container vessel registered to a Sicilian shell company. It departs in. Shin checked his watch. 4 hours. Marco will be there personally to oversee the loading. High-value cargo. 24 assets being relocated. My agency has teams ready to move, Alistair said. But we need confirmation the assets are actually on that ship. Marco's been using decoys for months. Then we give you confirmation, Shin said. Brittany approaches Marco. Offers him my empire. Gets herself invited onto that ship. Sends the signal. And your teams move. And if he doesn't believe her? Alistair asked. Then I improvise, Brittany said quietly. She looked at Shin, seeing him clearly for the first time in 11 months. Not her employer, not her target, but a player in a game far more complex than she'd understood. You've been planning this since you hired me. Since month 3, when I figured out who you were. The FBI agent who went rogue. The sister hunting her sister. The weapon looking for a target. His voice was almost gentle. You were perfect, Brittany. And I needed perfect. And when this is over, when Marco's network is destroyed and my sister is safe, then you disappear, like I promised. New identity, clean records, freedom. He paused. Unless you want something else. Like what? Like helping me build something better. An organization that uses power to protect instead of exploit. That dismantles networks like Marco's instead of profiting from them. His eyes were intense. You've spent 3 years becoming a weapon. I'm offering you a chance to be something more. Before she could respond, Chris's radio crackled. Boss, Marco's people are moving. They're abandoning the wedding lockdown. Convoy heading toward Port Newark. Shin's expression shifted to cold calculation. He's making his move early. He knows something's wrong. He looked at Brittany. We're out of time. You need to approach him now. At the port, before he loads that ship and disappears. How am I supposed to get there? We're trapped in this estate. Mrs. Han's voice came from the doorway, making them all spin. You're not trapped. I have a car waiting at the east gate. Keys to the service entrance. She stepped into the room, her expression resolute. I knew you'd need an exit, nephew. I always do. Shin moved to her, kissing her forehead. Thank you, Aunt. Don't thank me. Just survive. She looked at Brittany. And you, child, be careful. Marco is more dangerous than you know. He doesn't just traffic in bodies. He traffics in secrets, in compromising information, in leverage that destroys lives even after rescue. The warning hung heavy in the air. What does that mean? Brittany asked. It means your sister's freedom might come with a price you're not prepared to pay, Mrs. Han said quietly. Just remember, some cages have no locks, only keys that look like choices. Port Newark at midnight was a maze of shipping containers, cranes towering like mechanical giants, the smell of diesel and salt water thick in the air. Brittany crouched behind a rusted container, dressed in tactical black that Chris had provided, watching Marco's convoy arrive at Pier 47. 6 vehicles, at least 20 armed guards. Professional, alert, expensive. The container ship loomed above the pier. A massive steel beast painted in fading blues and grays, its name barely visible. Fortuna di Mare, Fortune of the Sea. Alistair's voice crackled through her upgraded earpiece. All teams in position. Snipers have sight lines. SWAT is ready to breach on your signal. But we need visual confirmation those assets are aboard. Copy that, Brittany whispered. Shin's voice cut in. Marco's exiting the lead vehicle. He's agitated, checking his phone constantly. He knows his timeline is compromised. From her position, Brittany could see Marco clearly now. Even from this distance, she could read the tension in his shoulders, the sharp gestures as he barked orders at his men. This was the man who'd stolen Zahra, who'd reduced her sister to inventory, who'd built an empire on suffering. I'm going in, Brittany said. Wait, Shin's voice was sharp. You need the right approach. Can't just walk up. He'll shoot first. Then I'll make sure he doesn't want to shoot. She stood, stepping out from behind the container with her hands raised, weapon holstered visibly, walking directly into the pool of floodlights that illuminated the pier. Marco's guards saw her immediately. Weapons came up. Red dots painted her chest. I need to speak to Consigliere Marco, she called out, her voice carrying across the pier. Tell him Brittany Davis has information about Shin Do-yoon's operation. Information that's worth more than whatever he's loading on that ship. The guards exchanged glances. One spoke into a radio. Rapid Italian. Tense. Marco appeared, walking toward her with controlled fury, his expensive suit looking wrong against the industrial backdrop of the port. He stopped 10 feet away. Miss Davis. Shin Do-yoon's mysterious companion. The woman with no past. That's not true. I have a past. I just kept it hidden from my employer. She lowered her hands slowly. I'm FBI, or I was, before I went rogue to find my sister. Marco's expression shifted. Ah, Now we're getting somewhere interesting. Your sister, Zara Davis. 16 years old when she was taken. 19 now. Premium merchandise. The casual cruelty in his voice made her want to draw her weapon and put a bullet between his eyes. Instead, she forced herself to stay calm. Shin Yoon has been using me. He figured out who I was months ago. He's been manipulating me to get to you. She pulled out a microdrive from her pocket. This contains access codes to his secondary accounts, transaction records, names of officials on his payroll. Everything you'd need to dismantle his operation and absorb his territory. Marco's eyes gleamed. And you're offering me this because? Because I want my sister. And I want out. Clean identity. Enough money to disappear. You give me that and I give you Shin's empire. Why should I believe you're not still working for him? That this isn't some elaborate trap? Because I have nothing left to lose. The FBI won't take me back after I went rogue. Shin's using me as a pawn. And my sister is running out of time. She took a step closer. You're consolidating tonight because you know law enforcement is closing in. This is your last chance to relocate high-value assets. Which means this is my last chance to find Zahra before she disappears into a network I'll never penetrate. Marco studied her face, reading the desperation that wasn't entirely faked. Then he smiled. You're telling the truth. Not about everything. I can see the lies woven through your story. But about your desperation. That's real. He gestured, and his guards lowered their weapons. Come. Let me show you what you're really bargaining for. He led her onto the ship, through narrow corridors that smelled of oil and rust, down steel staircases into the belly of the vessel. His guards followed, weapons ready, watching her every move. They reached a cargo hold. Marco unlocked it with a biometric scanner, and the door hissed open. Inside, 24 women in gray clothing, sitting on benches bolted to the floor, drugged but conscious. Eyes vacant, broken. Brittany's eyes scanned the group frantically, her heart hammering. And there, in the back corner, Zara, 3 years older, thinner. Her eyes hollow in ways that made Brittany's chest crack open, but alive. Alive and looking at nothing, seeing nothing, lost somewhere inside herself. Zara, Brittany whispered. Marco heard. His smile widened. Ah, so she is here. Fortune smiles on you, Miss Davis. Brittany forced herself to turn away from her sister, to focus on Marco. The drive. For her and the access codes. Not quite yet. First, you're going to prove that data is genuine. He pulled out his phone. Call Shin Yoon. Tell him you've been captured. That I'm demanding the quantum decryption key as ransom. Her blood went cold. What quantum decryption key? Don't play stupid. I know Shin has prototype decryption technology from his military contracts. Pentagon-level encryption cracking. That's how he's been monitoring my communications. That's how he knew my schedules, my movements, my plans. Marco's eyes were hard. I want that key. You get it for me, and I give you your sister. That's not the deal. The deal changed the moment you stepped onto my ship. He moved closer. You're not FBI anymore. You're not Shin's pawn. You're mine now. And you'll get me that decryption key, or your sister loads onto this ship in. He checked his watch. 90 minutes when we depart. Brittany's mind raced. There was no quantum decryption key. Shin had been monitoring Marco through traditional intelligence gathering, copied manifests, recorded meetings, human sources. Marco was chasing a ghost, which meant this was the trap Shin had set. Marco's paranoia about technology that didn't exist. Make the call, Marco demanded. She pulled out her phone, dialed Shin's number. He answered on the first ring. Brittany. I'm on the ship. Marco has Zara. He's demanding your quantum decryption key in exchange for her and… Shin's laugh cut her off, cold, amused. There is no quantum key, Marco. I know you're listening. I know you're waiting for me to confirm your paranoid fantasy. But the truth is simpler and more humiliating. I've been beating you with basic tradecraft. Copied documents, bribed officials, human intelligence, the old ways, the ways your arrogance made you overlook. Marco's face went white with rage. Shin's voice continued, colder now. You're standing on a ship that's surrounded by federal agents. You're holding assets that will send you to prison for life. And you're realizing, finally, that you've been outplayed by an immigrant you treated like a useful servant and a rogue agent you thought you could manipulate. Marco ended the call, his hand shaking. Secure the ship, get us ready to depart immediately, and put Miss Davis in the hold with the rest of the cargo. The guards moved toward Brittany. She triggered the signal. A single press of the button hidden in her watch, and Port Newark exploded into chaos. Floodlights blazed to life. Helicopters thundered overhead. Loudspeakers boomed. "This is the FBI. The vessel is surrounded. Release the hostages and surrender immediately." Marco spun toward Brittany, drawing a weapon. "You." She was faster. Her gun was in her hand, trained center mass. "Don't move." Behind Marco, his guards were shouting, confused, trying to process the tactical teams pouring onto the pier. "It's over," Brittany said quietly. "Your network is exposed. Your assets are being seized. And my sister is walking off this ship, today." Marco's finger tightened on the trigger. The shot came from behind Brittany, through the cargo hold door. A single, precise round that hit Marco's shoulder, spinning him around. His weapon clattered across the floor. Brittany turned to see Shin standing in the doorway, his weapon still raised, Chris and Mrs. Han behind him. "I told you," Shin said, moving into the hold. "I don't let my weapons break. I arm them." Federal agents flooded the cargo hold, securing Marco, checking the women, calling for medical teams. Alistair appeared, directing the operation with military precision. But Brittany only had eyes for one person. She crossed the hold, knelt in front of Zahra, touched her sister's face with shaking hands. "Zahra, it's me. It's Brittany. I found you. You're safe now." Zahra's eyes focused slowly, recognition dawning like sunrise. "Britt?" Her voice was hoarse, broken. "Is this real?" "It's real. I've got you. I'm never letting go again." Zahra collapsed into her arms, sobbing, 3 years of trauma pouring out in waves. Brittany held her, tears streaming down her own face, feeling the weight of 3 years finally lifting. Behind them, agents were reading Marco his rights. The other women were being evaluated by EMTs. The ship was being secured. And Shin stood watching, his expression unreadable, his weapon holstered, blood on his collar from where Marco's shot had grazed him. Mrs. Han moved to Brittany, placing a warm hand on her shoulder. "Come, child. Let's get your sister off this ship, into somewhere clean, somewhere safe." Brittany helped Zahra to her feet, supporting her weight, guiding her toward the exit. As they passed Shin, Zahra looked at him, her eyes clearer now. "You helped her find me." "Yes," Shin said simply. "Why?" He looked at Brittany. "Because some debts are worth paying, and some weapons are worth protecting." The safe house was in Queens, nondescript, protected by layers of security Alistair's agency had spent years constructing. Medical staff had examined Zahra, malnourished, dehydrated, psychologically traumatized but physically unharmed. The doctor prescribed rest, therapy, time to heal, time to rebuild, time to become whole again. It was 3 days before Zahra slept through the night without waking up screaming. A week before she could eat solid food without getting sick. 2 weeks before she could shower without having a panic attack. Brittany stayed beside her through all of it, sleeping on the floor beside Zahra's bed, holding her hand through the nightmares, being the anchor her sister needed. Alistair visited daily, bringing updates on the investigation. Marco's network was collapsing. 18 arrests across 6 countries. Hundreds of victims identified and being repatriated. The shipping company's assets frozen. Officials on Marco's payroll being indicted. It was the largest trafficking bust in FBI history. But Brittany felt empty. On day 16, Shin Yoon appeared at the safe house. Mrs. Han had sent word ahead. He was coming. He wanted to speak with Brittany. He would respect her boundaries. Brittany met him in the small kitchen, while Zahra slept in the bedroom. He looked different, tired. The invincible mob boss facade cracked to show something almost human beneath. "How is she?" he asked. "Healing. Slowly, but healing." Brittany poured 2 cups of coffee, sliding one across the table to him. "Your network. What's left of it? Burning. The Colombos are in chaos. Marco's arrest exposed their entire trafficking operation. Don Colombo is facing federal racketeering charges. His captains are turning state's evidence. Shin sipped the coffee. I'm being forced to rebuild from the ground up. Everything that touched Marco's network, gone. Destroyed. Toxic. That was your plan all along? Yes. Burn the old empire. Build something new from the ashes. His eyes met hers. But I need help building it. I need someone who understands what's worth protecting. What's worth saving. Shin. I'm not asking you to decide now. I'm asking you to remember the offer. When Zara's ready. When you're ready. When you've figured out who you want to be next. I want to be her sister. That's all. Liar. His voice was gentle. You want to be her sister and the woman who destroys networks like Marco's. Both can be true, Brittany. You can protect her and fight for others. Mrs. Han appeared in the doorway, her presence commanding despite her small frame. Nephew, the girl needs peace, not recruitment speeches. I'm not recruiting. I'm offering partnership. Shin stood. Take the time you need, but know this. The work isn't done. Marco's arrest exposed one network. There are dozens more. Hundreds more. And they're learning from his mistakes. Becoming more careful. More hidden. That's not my problem anymore. Isn't it? He moved toward the door, paused. You spent 3 years becoming a weapon to save your sister. You succeeded. But that weapon doesn't just disappear because the target is eliminated. You'll always be what you became. The only question is, what will you aim at next? He left, Mrs. Han following, leaving Brittany alone with the question. The villa in Santorini was everything Zara needed. White stone, blue shutters, gardens that smelled like jasmine and salt air. Far from New York. Far from the darkness that had swallowed 3 years of her life. Brittany stood on the terrace, watching the sunset paint the Mediterranean in shades of gold and crimson. Behind her, she could hear Zara laughing. Actually laughing. At something their neighbor's dog was doing. 6 months of intensive therapy. 6 months of safety. 6 months of healing. Zara was 19 now, enrolled in online university courses, making friends with the locals, painting again, bright, vivid colors that felt like reclamation. She was learning to live with her trauma rather than be defined by it. She was going to be okay. Not today, not completely, but eventually. Brittany's phone buzzed. A message from an encrypted number she'd been expecting for weeks. The Colombos made their move. 3 warehouses hit. 12 casualties. I'm ending this permanently. Could use your expertise. S. She stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the reply button. 6 months of quiet. 6 months of pretending she could be normal. 6 months of lying to herself about what she really wanted. Footsteps behind her. Zahra, holding 2 glasses of wine, her smile bright despite everything. You're thinking about going back, Zahra said. It wasn't a question. No, I'm staying here. With you. Brittany. Zahra handed her a glass, then leaned against the railing beside her. I love you. You saved me. You gave up everything to find me. But you can't spend the rest of your life being my shadow. I'm not. Yes, you are. And it's killing you. Zahra's eyes were sad but clear. I see it. The way you watch the news. The way you train every morning like you're preparing for war. The way you look at your phone like you're waiting for orders. Brittany's throat tightened. I just want you safe. I am safe. Dr. Stavros is amazing. Maria checks on me every day. I have friends, classes, a life. She touched Brittany's arm. And you have a mob boss texting you about going to war. It's not like that. Isn't it? Zahra smiled, knowing and wise beyond her years. He helped you save me, and now he needs help. And you're sitting here pretending you don't want to go. I can't just leave you. You're not leaving me. You're living your life. Zahra squeezed her arm. You spent 3 years becoming a weapon to save me. Now I'm asking you to stop punishing yourself for it. Go. Fight. Do what you were made to do. I'll be here when you're done. Zahra. I mean it. You gave me my life back. Now take yours. Zahra's eyes were bright with tears and determination. You taught me to fight, to survive, to never give up. Now let me return the favor. I'm telling you to stop surviving and start living. And your life isn't here, playing babysitter to your little sister. Your life is out there, destroying the monsters that create victims like me." Brittany pulled her sister into a fierce embrace, breathing in the scent of jasmine and hope. "When did you get so wise?" "Somewhere between hell and here." Zara smiled. "Go, before I change my mind and make you stay for dinner." Brittany looked at her phone, at Shin's message, at the life she'd tried to leave behind. Then she typed a response. "I'll be there in 48 hours. Don't start without me. B." The response came immediately. "I wouldn't dream of it. Mrs. Han is already preparing your room." The private jet was pure Shin. Black leather, dark wood, technology embedded in every surface. A mobile command center disguised as luxury. Brittany had boarded in Athens, and now, somewhere over the Atlantic, she was reviewing the tactical briefings he'd sent. The Colombo retaliation was brutal and calculated. They'd hit Shin's operations simultaneously. Warehouses, clubs, shipping routes. 12 dead, millions in losses. A declaration of war that couldn't be ignored. But what caught her attention was the pattern. The targets weren't random. They were specifically chosen to cripple Shin's legitimate businesses, to force him back into the shadows where the old families could control him through fear. They were trying to break him, to remind him of his place. It wouldn't work. Men like Shin didn't break. They adapted. The plane began its descent into Teterboro. Through the window, she could see the New York skyline, glittering and indifferent to the war being waged in its shadows. A car was waiting on the tarmac. Black SUV, tinted windows, Chris Blake behind the wheel. He nodded as she climbed in. "Boss is at the penthouse. He's been waiting for you." "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that we're preparing for a final assault on what's left of the Colombo operations. This ends tomorrow night." Chris glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "He wants you to lead the infiltration team." The penthouse hadn't changed. Still sleek, still dark, still radiating controlled power. But Shin looked different, tired. The kind of bone-deep weariness that came from fighting battles on too many fronts. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, hair slightly disheveled, a glass of whiskey in his hand. When his eyes found hers, they lit with something that looked almost like relief. "You came," he said quietly. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I hoped." He set down the glass, moving toward her. "But hope is dangerous in my world." She closed the distance between them, her hand touching his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. "Tell me what you need." "You. I need you." His hand covered hers, pressing it against his cheek. "The Colombos think they can force me back into the darkness. But I'm done being what they expect. I want to build something that doesn't require trafficking and extortion. Something that uses power to dismantle networks like Marco's instead of profiting from them. That's a dangerous dream." "Then help me make it reality." He pulled her closer. "You've spent 6 months healing your sister, being the woman she needed. But I know you, Brittany. You've been waiting for this. You're asking me to help you end a war. And start something new. The Colombos represent everything I'm trying to destroy. If we take them down completely, we send a message. That the old ways are over." He leaned in, forehead touching hers. "You and me. The soldier and the boss. The woman who burns empires and the man who builds them." She should have walked away, but Shin was right. She'd been waiting for this. "What's the plan?" she asked. His smile was sharp. "Tomorrow night, while Don Colombo hosts a meeting with his remaining captains, we infiltrate. You lead a team through the underground tunnels. While they're focused on our frontal assault, you reach the Don's private office. You secure the files that prove his corruption, and you bring them to the FBI. You want to use the law against him? I want to destroy him so completely that his family name becomes synonymous with shame." Shin's eyes glittered with cold fury. "I want him to rot in a cell, knowing a Korean immigrant and a black intelligence operative dismantled everything he built. And after? After, we build something better. A network that protects instead of exploits. That uses my resources to dismantle trafficking operations. That turns power into something that actually saves lives." He cupped her face. "You want to be my partner? Then give me a kingdom worth ruling." She kissed him then, deep and possessive, tasting like whiskey and desperation and promise. When they broke apart, she said, "I'll lead your team, but when this is over, We do this my way. We build something that actually matters. Deal, he said. We destroy the Colombos, and we build something new from the ashes. The Colombo estate at night was a fortress under siege. High walls, armed patrols, surveillance cameras covering every approach. But Shin's intelligence was precise. Underground access tunnels built during Prohibition, forgotten by everyone except Mrs. Han, who'd spent decades collecting secrets. Brittany led a team of 6 through the tunnels. Chris, Alistair, officially consulting, and 4 of Shin's most trusted operatives. They moved in silence, weapons ready, communications encrypted. Above them, Shin was executing the frontal assault. A coordinated attack on the estate's main gates, designed to draw every guard to the perimeter. The tunnel opened into the estate's wine cellar. Brittany checked her watch. 3 minutes until Shin's assault began. 3 minutes to reach the office. They moved through the basement, up service stairs, through corridors that smelled of old money and older secrets. No guards. Everyone had been pulled to the perimeter. The Don's office was on the 3rd floor. Brittany picked the lock in 15 seconds, and they slipped inside. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk, and behind a false panel that Mrs. Han had identified, a safe. Brittany attached the decryption device Shin had provided. The safe clicked open. Inside, ledgers, hard drives, documents, everything. Decades of corruption, trafficking, extortion. All the evidence the FBI would need to dismantle what remained of the Colombo Empire. Alistair was already photographing documents, uploading them to secure servers. Then the door burst open. Don Colombo stood in the doorway, flanked by 4 guards. His face was a mask of rage. "You dare." Brittany drew her weapon. Her team did the same. Standoff. "It's over," she said quietly. "Your network is exposed. Marco's cooperating with federal prosecutors. Your captains are being arrested as we speak, and these files are going to the FBI. You think this ends me? I have connections." "Had," she corrected. Past tense. "Your connections are abandoning you. Your money is frozen. Your empire is ash." The Don's face twisted. "Then I'll kill you myself." The shot came from the window. A single, precise round from one of Shin's snipers. The Don dropped. His guards hesitated, then lowered their weapons as federal agents poured into the room. Alistair stepped forward. "Don Colombo, you're under arrest for racketeering, human trafficking, and about 50 other charges. You have the right to remain silent." Brittany stepped back, letting the FBI take over. Her part was done. She found Shin on the estate's grounds, watching as agents secured the property. His face was bloodied, his jacket torn, but he was standing. "It's done," she said. "Not quite." He pulled her close. "We still have to build what comes next." Mrs. Han appeared, remarkably unruffled despite the chaos. "The old empire is dead. Now comes the hard part, creating something that doesn't repeat its mistakes." Brittany looked at them both. The mob boss trying to transcend his origins. The matriarch who'd spent decades collecting leverage to protect her nephew. And herself. The weapon who'd found a purpose beyond revenge. "Then let's build something worth protecting," she said. Shin smiled. Together. Number epilogue. 1 year later. The foundation was called Second Chances. Publicly, it provided support services for trafficking victims, therapy, legal aid, job training, housing. Privately, it was funded by Shin's empire and operated by Brittany's intelligence network. They dismantled 3 major trafficking operations in the first year, rescued over 200 victims, put 17 criminals behind bars. Zahra worked for the foundation now, using her experience to help other survivors. She was thriving, teaching art classes, studying psychology, building a life that honored her trauma without being defined by it. Brittany stood in the foundation's New York office, reviewing intel on their next target, when Shin entered. He wrapped his arms around her waist, kissing her neck. "Ready for tonight?" "Always." Tonight, they were hitting a network in Boston. Coordinated with FBI, Alistair leading the tactical team. Everything they'd built over the past year coming together. "Mrs. Han wants us for dinner tomorrow," Shin said. "She's worried we're not eating enough." Brittany laughed. "We're eating fine. Tell her that." They stood together, looking out at the city. A city full of shadows and secrets, but also hope. and the promise of protection for those who needed it most. Do you regret it? Shin asked quietly. The life we're living, the risks? No. She turned in his arms, kissing him. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Fighting beside you, building something that matters. A queen on my throne, a partner in your empire, she smiled. And a weapon aimed at every monster who thinks they can profit from suffering. He pulled her closer. I love you. I love you too. And together, they prepared for the next war, the next rescue, the next chance to turn power into protection. Because some debts were worth paying, some weapons were worth protecting, and some empires were worth building, not for profit, but for purpose.